It's game week, Rube. How exciting.
It is, and it just seems like it takes forever to get here. And I think Sunday is going to take forever for Sunday to get here. But yeah, it's really exciting. A lot of new energy around the team, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we have a lot to get to today. And now that we're back in the season, podcasts are going to be a little more structured. You know, we're going to have our typical, we're going to try to do it as well as we can Tuesday, Thursday, and after the game. I should mention this is Eagle Eye with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. If you got this far, you figured that out. But it's fun. We'll kind of get into a rhythm this season. And on Thursday's podcast, we'll really get into week one and the matchup against the Falcons. But today we figured we'd kind of take a little broader look at the Eagles, at the season, and kind of what we expect to happen this year. But before we do all that, we have some news to get to. Dallas Goedert spoke to us on Monday, and it was a holiday, so if you missed it, that's okay. He gave us a little bit of news that the Eagles and his representation have broken off extension talks, which is a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal. It kind of came out of nowhere. And, you know, it was followed pretty quickly by the news that Mark Andrews of the Ravens signed a huge kind of tight end redefining contract, which only helps Dallas Goedert. He's only going to make more money if Mark Andrews does. And it just kind of, we were just talking about how the tight end salary bar hadn't really, it was kind of an undervalued position. And, you know, that huge contract really hadn't happened yet, but it's happened now for a guy that's not Kelsey or Kittle. I mean, he's kind of in that second tier with Zach Ertz and Goedert and that second group of guys. So kind of a redefining moment, and it raises Dallas Goedert's value. And, you know, without knowing the numbers, I would say that Dallas Goedert is the one that is telling the Eagles, no, you're not offering me enough money. And it's a smart thing to do from his vantage point.
Yeah, and it's really tricky. And we've talked about this a while back, but it's hard to figure out what his value is. And there are also the Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry deals this offseason. You're right, that tight end position has been really slow to reset. And that was part of the whole deal. It's funny, we're talking about another tight end and not getting an extension with the Eagles, because that was part of the Zach Ertz talk a couple years ago, was that the Eagles were offering him a contract that was in line with where the tight end market was, but Ertz felt like he was of the caliber to raise the market like Kelsey and Kittle did. So, yeah, it's kind of a slow rise for tight ends around the league. And so it's overdue, honestly, with how tight ends are used in this league. But the Goedert thing is tricky to figure out. How much is he really worth? Because if you pay Goedert the Mark Andrews contract right now, you're paying him for a lot of what's a projection. You know, he hasn't had a great season yet. I do believe he's a top 10 tight end. I think he has the potential to be a great pass catcher. He does different things than Zach Ertz, and his blocking is always tough to quantify because he doesn't show up in the stat sheet. But largely, if you're paying Dallas Goedert that contract, you're doing it on projection. So there has to be some room in there between the two sides, which is, I'm sure, what made it tricky, because he wants to get paid like a top tight end, and the Eagles are saying, well, we can't pay you like that. I would think that we're trying to find some middle ground, but that's a tough middle ground to find.
You're right. And, you know, when Dallas Goedert says, you know, I consider myself one of the best tight ends in the league, that's basically, you know, him saying, I deserve what those guys are making. And, you know, so if the Eagles think that they can offer $8.5 million to Dallas Goedert and he's going to take it, they're clearly wrong. But again, these guys are both free agents. There's so many different twists and turns because they're both going to be taking reps away from each other. They're really good friends off the field, and they're both going to be costing each other money on the field. But Goedert, even though, like you said, and I agree, he hasn't had that one bust-out season. He hasn't had that 180-catch, 900-yard, whatever, 6 touch. He's still 11th in the league in yards and catches over the last 3 years, his 3 years in the league. And he wasn't even a full-time player his first year, really any of those years because of Ertz. And I think he's 14th in touchdowns. He got 12 touchdowns. He's 11th or 12th, but he's 11th or 12th in all those categories. So And when you factor in the blocking, to me, he's a top 10 tight end. And the price for those top 10 tight ends is going up, up, up. And, I think there's a fair chance. Again, the only tight ends that are under contract next year are Jack Stahl and Tyree Jackson. They're the only tight ends the Eagles have under contract. There's a very real chance that Ertz and Goedert will both be gone next year. Now, one of them will definitely be gone. Obviously, you can't sign. Well, the Patriots signed 2 big money free agent tight ends, but the Eagles aren't going to do that. I don't know who's more likely to be here. You can make a case that it's actually Zach Ertz, that he'll be the one getting, because he's older. And, I think we'll have to kind of see how the numbers play out. Nobody really knows exactly how much 2 tight end Nick Sirianni is going to play, how many reps each of them is going to get, how the playing time and the catches and the production is going to be split up. It's a really unusual and fascinating situation.
It is. And on its face, you would say, well, Dallas Goedert's 4 years younger. You go with that player, but there's no guarantee he's ever going to produce at the same level, at least as a pass catcher that Ertz has. And tight ends can play into their mid-30s. It's not crazy to think
late 30s, yeah.
Yeah, some even into their late 30s. So the idea, and Zach Ertz, he has gotten some injuries over the years, but he's also taking care of his body. So you can understand if you look at him and think, well, he could play another 3, 4, 5 years. And so it's a tricky thing. You're right. I mean, it's hard to imagine both of them being back next year. I would think that one of them would be. I don't think they can afford to lose both of them next year. In a way, they're probably hoping this just plays itself out this year. And one of them is clearly worth keeping and one isn't. But I don't know. It's a really interesting situation. It's almost like, honestly, it reminds me a little bit of the situation at safety, where they have Rodney McLeod, who's established but older, and then they have the young guy coming in, younger, and Anthony Harris, and they kind of play the same position. They're both entering the final year of their contracts. Anthony Harris was only a 1-year deal, but in 2 pretty key spots, they have players that they're going to have to make a decision on, probably one or the other, next offseason.
Yeah, you're right. I think Ertz is more likely to be here only because, and it's funny to talk about a hometown discount because Zach Ertz obviously was insulted by the Eagles' last contract offer, but you don't hear Dallas Goedert say things like, I want to retire here. I want to be an Eagle all my life, how much the city means to him. I mean, Zach Ertz has his foundation here. He's really planted, roots here. And you don't hear Dallas talk like that. And I think when the year is over, Dallas's value will be higher. I mean, all things being equal, it'll be higher just because he's younger, because he's 4 years younger. But I just have a feeling the way it's going to – I think Zach Ertz is in great shape. He had a really good camp. And I think he'll play well, better than last year. But I don't think he's going to have a huge number. I think he'll break Harold's record. But I don't think he's going to have a huge number of catches. I think when we assess value at the end of the year, Dallas's will be, I would say, significantly higher. And if you're the Eagles and you can only pick one and – maybe Ertz wants, maybe you can pay Ertz $10 million and Goedert wants $15 million. Well, who knows what the numbers are, but I just think I can see more of a path to Ertz being here than Goedert. But yeah, again, either one's possible.
Which, if you would have told me that 2 months ago, I would have sent people in white coats to come get you, because we were talking about Ertz was definitely gone. Now, how do you think that, I'm just picturing Howie Roseman calling Zach's agent to restart contract talks, like, deep breath, here we go, let's try this again. I guess that could happen. Part of me thinks it would be a mistake to go with the older player, and I know that's a generalization, and I know that there's a long-standing relationship with Zach in the city, and I don't want to completely discount that, but do you agree with me in a way that it might be a mistake to go with Zach in that case? And this is without seeing them on the field this year.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. And I really like Dallas, the player. But yeah, I think we really need to see him, take ownership of that position and put up big numbers. But again, it's going to be hard to do that with Zach Ertz playing. I mean, the whole thing is so convoluted. I don't know. I don't know how Nick keeps them both happy. Doug played, just from the numbers. I mean, Doug played 35%, 12 personnel last year. The Colts, and again, Nick isn't Frank, but the Colts played 21%. So I don't know how you get them both enough touches. It's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of unknowns. I think basically whoever has the better year is gone. And if they're close, I think Dallas is gone. But a part of it is just going to be, how and it's the right thing to do, to play them off each other and to play the agents off each other. Say, look, if you take this, you're guaranteed that we're going to give you this guaranteed money right now, and let the other guy hit the open market. Who knows there? It's a tricky deal.
If you're Howie right now, do you let it play out, or do you say, we want to get a contract done with one of these guys during the season?
Yeah.
I would think in that case, you'd probably try to extend Goedert during the season. That would be my guess.
Yeah. And I'm sure Howie wants to, but again, that number's going up. I mean, Goedert turned down X number of dollars before Mark Andrews raised the bar. So to think that they might be able to bridge that gap now is, more of a long shot than it was. But yeah, if you're Howie, you'd like to lock one of them up. But I'm not sure that's going to happen.
How do you think Nick Sirianni plays this? Because during training camp, we kind of made fun of him for this a little bit, because he's backed in the corner in these press conferences with this question. But he said he doesn't think Zach's presence on the roster will force him to play more 12 personnel, which that seems impossible to me. I think it has to force him to play more 12 personnel, because if you're looking at putting your 5 best skill players on the field, well, guess what? Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are 2 of them.
Yeah, he didn't say he wasn't going to play more 12. He just said it wasn't because of Ertz's presence. He could
I don't think if Jack Stoll was here, he'd be playing the same amount of 12.
But, you look at their wide receivers, and they're all young, and they're all, even Devontae, we don't know what he is. We don't know if Jalen Reagor is going to make a big jump in year 2. We don't know if Quez can build on what he's done in training camp. So there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot more unknowns there. When you talk about they're going to go 3 wides all the time, there's a lot more unknowns there. And if you're Nick, you might feel more comfortable until those wide receivers kind of establish themselves and establish that they're going to be big-time weapons. It might behoove you to play more 2 tight ends anyway.
It might be better for Jalen Hurts to have reliable big targets in the middle of the field.
But he likes chucking it down the field too.
He does, but I think for a young quarterback, having that safety valve is a nice thing. I just think in general, the 12 personnel is not going to be as explosive. And, if you were looking at nameless, faceless players and you said, Nick Sirianni, what do you want to run? He'd go out there with 3 wides all the time. So it's a little, I think, against his nature to run 12 heavy, but I think he probably came around more during the summer when he was out there watching Zach Ertz play and realizing that, okay, this guy still looks pretty good. He can help us. Now it's up to Sirianni to figure out. And I'm sure a lot of it will be matchup dependent too. If depending on the defense they're playing, that'll probably dictate a lot of what they're going to do personnel wise.
And who's healthy? There's so much goes into it. If they get, what's the average number of snaps per game? 65 to 70.
Something like that.
Let's say 70 snaps. If you play 1 tight end, 3/4, let's say 3/4 of the time, you're talking about 90 snaps for tight ends for the 2 of them. And there'll be a snap or 2 where they play 3 tight ends. But so it's not like they're not going to play. So if they split it up, you're talking about 45 snaps each instead of what they're used to, which is more like 55. So it's a significant drop, but they'll still both be out there a lot. It's just going to be weird seeing Zach Ertz on the sidelines. Let's face it, it's going to be strange.
Yeah, but even, I know Zach Ertz was hurt last year a little bit, but Dallas started to eclipse him in terms of snaps. And I'm sure some of that was for his blocking because the offensive line was so beat up. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It's something to follow all year. It's going to be a storyline. All right. I wanted to get into, I wrote a story the other day, and if you missed it, it was on a holiday. So probably not the best planning by me, but 11 things I learned about the Eagles this summer from watching every minute of every practice. So I figured we could just go through some of them, and you can tell me if you agree, disagree, and then maybe there's some I missed. But the first one was Jalen Hurts, and as impressed as I was with him as a player and as a thrower, I thought he improved in that area. I was really impressed by his leadership, and it's something we had heard about for a while, but really seeing him be able to, as Howie would say, or Nick would say, take the reins of the position and be the leader. It was impressive all summer, and it was clear that his teammates trust him and they gravitate toward him.
Yeah, and I'm not big on leadership. I think it's really overrated in a lot of ways, but it's so natural with him, and he doesn't try to be a leader. He just is one by being himself. And that's really what leadership is. It's not the rah-rah stuff. It's your work ethic and just the way you treat people and the way you carry yourself when you're the quarterback. It's just a natural thing. And we've seen guys here who talk about leadership, quarterbacks, and if you have to talk about it, if you have to say I'm a leader, you're not one. And we've all seen that. He doesn't need to do that. He just is himself, and guys naturally gravitate toward him. I think his work ethic inspires other guys to work. Even the older guys talk about it. You know how hard a worker he is, and to keep up with him, you got to work just as hard. So that's what leadership to me really is. It's not rah-rah stuff. It's not I'm a leader. It's just being yourself and working your ass off, and he does that.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is the rah-rah at times, and he's not going to be out there with pom-poms, but I think when he gets in the huddle with the guys, they trust that he's going to put them in a good position. So that means that I didn't write it, but one of the key moments of training camp for me was when Nick Sirianni parroted Jalen's saying about rent is due every day. Once the head coach starts using your sayings, you're in a good spot. I think that was a big moment in my eyes. All right, the next one was that Javon Hargrave and Josh Sweat look poised to have really big seasons. And you don't want to go overboard with what you see in these practices, but those guys were wrecking balls all summer.
Yeah, I don't think of Sweat as a wrecking ball just because Hargrave's like built like a wrecking ball, But yeah, I think they both. I mean, this D line. I'm excited to see this D line and what they can do and how they all come together. And those two guys, I think, look the most improved over last year. Certainly. You already have BG and Fletcher and Barnett, and then you have these two guys making what looks to be quantum leaps, and it's they're going to make life difficult for a lot of offensive lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that is going to be among the league leaders in sacks. I don't think that's a stretch at all. I'd say top 3, top 5 for sure.
Well, they were third last year, and they're better.
Yeah, I agree with that. They are in a system that might not be as aggressive, but I think they're still going to have their opportunities.
And we'll see what, we haven't really seen much of Ryan Kerrigan. We'll see, what he's able to contribute to.
Yeah. And when I say not as aggressive, I mean the front. I mean, we might see more blitzes, which would help sack numbers too. The next one was that Sirianni's offense is going to look different than what we've seen the last 5 years under Doug Peterson. And not to get too much into detail, but I think we're going to see a lot of short passes designed to be big plays, whether that means shallow crossers or throws to the flat or bubble screens. A lot of his philosophy is that big plays can come from short passes, and it kind of minimizes the risk factor when you have those plays. So that's a big thing with him. We're going to see some pre-snap movement designed to draw the eyes, and that kind of really works well with Jalen Hurts and his legs and the ability he has to run. I think you can take advantage of some defense's aggressiveness, and it looks like Sirianni is going to do that. And the last one is that the receivers are going to be interchangeable. And that's not to say that, they're always going to move around. I think for the most part, you're going to have the outside guys outside and the slot guys inside. But there will be opportunities for them to move in and out, and he's going to utilize them.
Yeah, and I think that's really, in a lot of ways, true for this entire team. A lot of what both coaches, both sides of the ball believe in is interchangeable parts, being unpredictable, moving guys to different positions, showing new looks all the time, and just being as versatile and multiple and unpredictable as possible.
Yeah, and the next part of it is running backs catching the ball out of the backfield is going to be a big deal, which leads me to the next point. Miles Sanders, the drops in training camp were troubling. After a year where he had 8, and not all of them were perfect passes last year or in training camp, but he has to be a receiving threat to maximize his potential in this offense. So you wonder if at a certain point the Eagles are going to have to make a decision. Sirianni's going to have to make a decision like, can I leave him out there in passing situations and live with a drop here or there, or do I have to remove him at certain times and put in Kenny Gainwell or put in Boston Scott? It's a tricky thing to deal with, because ideally you'd figure out this issue and you'd make Miles a better pass catcher, but the drops were troubling this summer.
Yeah, and it really puts Nick in a difficult position, because you can't just throw the ball every time Miles is not on the field, and you can't, you can't only have Miles run the ball. So there's got to be times if Miles pass catching is so bad, he's got to come off the field in situations. You still have to run the ball in those situations. And Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott are not as good as Miles Sanders running the ball, though I think they're both okay. I think Gainwell has a chance to be pretty good at it. So to be versatile and unpredictable, Miles has to catch the ball. It's that simple. To make this thing work the way he wants it to work, he's got to be able to do – they all have to be able to do both, run, block, catch everything. And right now he's a question mark with his receiving, and he's going to lose playing time if he doesn't get better.
Yeah, it's a little scary to think about. The next one is that the Eagles, I thought their 2 weakest positions heading into last year have been greatly improved. You look at the secondary and you look at linebacker. They added Eric Wilson, they added Steven Nelson, and they added Anthony Harris. I think all significant upgrades, I'd say, over the guys they had in those positions last year.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think secondary is probably the most improved position group. Assuming Rodney's able to be Rodney, it's the most improved position group on the team. It was a real problem last year. Part of that was injuries, but also just weren't good enough. So if these guys are what I think they are, they're going to be solid. And having that D line is going to make any secondary even better.
Yeah, that'll help for sure. Next one, we'll kind of cruise through a few of these. Jonathan Gannon is not lying about being multiple. I think that word, multiple and versatile, those words have become buzzwords in the NFL. But Gannon's he's not all talk. What we've seen from him this summer, a lot of what he does is going to change on a week-to-week basis, and that's ambitious for sure. But if he can pull it off, this defense could end up being really good.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It is a lot. It's a lot to learn and study. It's a lot. They're throwing a lot at some young guys and some players who are used to just playing one position, and that's not going to be the case. And it's there's a lot of study involved and a lot of learning and film watching, and then going on the field and putting it into play while you're out there defending Matt Ryan or whoever it is. So it's we'll see how quickly they can get to that point.
Yeah. The next one is that the receivers have potential, but they're question marks. You have your starting 3 receivers are a rookie and 2 second-year players. So as they definitely have potential, but like we were talking about a little bit earlier, we don't know. I think Devontae is the one I feel the most comfortable about being a solid player at worst, just because I think his route running, I fully expect that to translate. So if nothing else, he can get open with just the way he runs his routes. The other 2 are question marks, and that's not to take anything away from them. Jalen Reagor's coming off a disappointing season, but he's had moments in camp. And Quez is greatly improved, but he was a 6th-round pick last year. So I don't know how high the expectations truly can be for him.
Yeah, and I really think that's true for the whole group. I mean, Greg Ward's really the only known quantity as far as that wide receiver position. I mean, Quez, Jalen Reagor, and Devontae have 38 career catches among them. So while the potential is there, maybe the expectations are a little too high because, we just don't know. I mean, I agree with you about Devontae. I'll be really surprised if he's not a really good player, if he's not their best, significantly by far best wide receiver. But the other two, we've seen it at times with Quez. We've seen it more consistently than Jalen, but we just don't know.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing. And there were a lot of people who thought the Eagles should bring in a veteran receiver during the offseason, and I understand that. That was a valid argument. I like the idea of them in this transition year letting these young players get the playing time and finding out what they have and letting them grow with the young quarterback. I like that idea. So even though it might not be the best thing for them this year, I think it could pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay. We talked about 12 personnel. That's one of them. The strengths of this team still their offensive and defensive lines. And that's not to say that some of these players they're relying on aren't older. I mean, some of their oldest players and their best players are on the offensive and defensive lines, but both should be top units this year. And I think it's going to keep them in a lot of games that you would think they wouldn't be in.
It's amazing that 9 years after Andy Reid last coached a game in Philadelphia, or a game for the Eagles in Philadelphia, that his influence is still so greatly, because not only are the two lines the priority financially, the Eagles are spending more on the two lines than any team, but three of his players are some of the better players on those lines. And Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox are the three remaining Andy Reid guys, and they're really the heart of those two lines in a lot of ways. So it's really incredible that 9 years later, Andy Reid's still has a pretty big. It's interesting. The most money spent on the two lines, the Eagles are first and the Chiefs are second. So that tells you where that's coming from, and Howie has adopted that, and they spend more money, and they're the two most important positions. So it's interesting. The Andy Reid legacy lives on 9 years later.
3 of the 6 captains in 2021 are Andy Reid players.
Is that incredible?
It's unbelievable. It really is.
2012, and they were. Kelce was 2010, BG was 2011, and Fletch was 2012. It's crazy.
Yeah. The next one, Jordan Mailata just won that position battle so easily. I mean, it was supposed to be the thing to watch this summer, and it wasn't. It just wasn't the thing to watch because in the first week, Mailata had it won.
Yeah, but it was fun to watch just because I think it brought out the best in Jordan. He had a really, really good camp. And, I think I'm not saying he wouldn't have been motivated without Andre Dillard competing, but he practiced at a really high level and played at a high level.
And people won't remember this. Last summer, he did not have a good camp. There was a reason he was the third option at left tackle during the season. It was because we were watching him at camp last year thinking, he might have regressed. He might not, this might never work. And that might have been a little knee jerk, but based on what we saw last summer, it looked like he wasn't ready to play in the NFL.
I think Matt Pryor was ahead of him at one point.
Well, he wasn't ready to play either, but
he's still not ready to play.
Yeah.
Hey, score big with, I'm sorry.
I have one more.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought that was 10. Yeah. What do you
got? I did 11.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the last one was just that the Eagles are much healthier heading into this season than they were last year. And a lot of that's by design, by Nick Sirianni design. So you can question those methods, but if this was the result he was looking for, yeah. I mean, remember last year, that opener, they got off to such a horrible start last year. They were without Miles Sanders, Lane Johnson, obviously Brandon Brooks. It was a mess. Javon Hargrave. So it looks like they're going to have most, if not all, their starters for week 1.
Yeah, and that was the goal. And if you, I know a lot of people are complaining about how little the starters played in the preseason. I get it, but you can't complain about that and complain about the injuries. You got to take one or the other, because the reason they're so healthy is because those guys didn't play in the preseason. So we'll see if that translates, if they're ready. I don't know, but we'll see how. We'll know in a few days. Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership. Along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA, get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
All right. This is the moment of the pod I am looking forward to, but also dreading because I don't know what's coming. Normally, I'm in control here, and this is one of those times where I'm not. We're going to get to some season predictions, and there are 10 categories. Is that right? That
10
you came up
categories.
with?
Yeah,
I don't know about yet.
We might need a tiebreaker too. I'll add a tiebreaker, but
Okay.
and we'll give the results of these. If I win, we give the results right after the season. If Dave wins, I kind of tend to forget about it. But we'll start with this, and some of them are kind of predictable. Jalen Hurts total touchdowns, rushing plus passing.
Rushing plus passing. Ooh, and a 17-game season, that throws everything off a little bit.
Just add a couple.
Okay.
And I have all my numbers down here, so like.
I know. You got to give me so how does it work? Is it just closest, or are we playing Price is Right rules?
No, closest. This ain't a game show.
Okay, because I don't want to say like 2 and you get 3 and then Oh,
I already have my numbers here.
Okay, all right. Total Jalen Hurts touchdowns.
You just don't trust me. Dave just does not trust me.
34.
Okay, I went 32.
Okay.
So that's good. We're in the same ballpark. Devontae receiving
What happens
yards.
if it's 33?
It's a tie.
Okay. Devontae receiving yards. I'm going to give a weird number. 913.
Okay. Yeah, we're in the same ballpark again. I went 989.
Okay. I think 912 is the rookie record.
Oh, I see. So you got him breaking Deshaun's record by 1 yard.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Number 3 is a 2-part question. Zach Ertz catches and Dallas Goedert catches.
Oh. Okay. All right. Dallas Goedert. $65.
Ooh.
Zach Ertz. $57.
Wow, that's a lot of catches.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I went 48 for Ertz and 58 for Goedert.
Yeah, that's a lot for me. I know.
Okay, that's a lot of catches. You want these guys to get paid. I understand. Total Eagle sacks. You just made a reference to being top 2 or 3 in the league. Total Eagle sacks.
Okay, I need
Last year they had 49.
Okay.
And that was actually their most since 2011. They had 50.
Yeah, they're going to break 50 this year. I'm going to go 55.
Okay, I put 53.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're on the same page. 55 would be their most. They've only had more than 50 once since the early 90s.
Okay.
And that was 2002. That was a great defense. That Jim Johnson group had 56 sacks.
In my head, this extra game is like so helpful. Like it's got, I think that last game of the season, they're going to have like 12 sacks and Goddard's going to have 12 catches. In my head, it's like the 17 games changes everything, but it really doesn't change that much.
Doesn't work that way. Miles Sanders rushing yards.
1,200.
Wow. I think all your answers are higher than mine. I went 1088.
Okay.
I went 1088.
I think he's going to have a big year rushing the ball. I think Nick's going to run the ball more, and I think he might lose some snaps in clear passing situations, but they're going to want him to tote the rock. I guess the question with him is if he can stay healthy.
Okay, I'm Kenny Gainwell, total offensive yards, total yards from scrimmage. Receiving plus rushing.
425.
425.
Yeah.
Really? See, that's low. That's really low to me. See, I went way higher than you.
Okay.
I went 788. I thought that was low. Darius Slay interceptions.
That's tough. Interceptions are such a wacky thing. I'll say 3.
All right, I went 4.
Yeah,
Josh,
I mean, that's like it could,
Yeah, well, that's why this is fun. Josh,
is it?
For me, it is. Josh Sweat sacks.
His record 6.
There's no way your guess will be higher than mine.
What do you got? Him breaking Strahan's record?
I went 26.
I don't. 8.5.
I went high. I went 11.5. I play in a hunch here. I think he's going to just be great this year.
It's possible. I still think he's going to, at least early in the season, he's going to have to split time with Barnett. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Landon Dickerson, 2 more to go. Landon Dickerson starts.
Man, there's so many variables here.
Well, yeah. That's why we're number 1 in Portugal.
I think there's a chance that late in the season he could find his way on the field. If a few things go as well, I mean, I'll say 3.
I went 4. So we're good there. Okay. The last one before the tiebreaker is Colts starting quarterback snap percentage. Does he hit 70, 75? The Colts starting quarterback.
I'll say 84.5.
Wow. Okay. He's not vaccinated,
I know.
Okay. I'm saying 68. I just have a hunch. All right, the tiebreaker, how many points will the Eagles score this year? And I
do math.
I said 379. I'll make it easier just so you can go, which is like 22.3 per game. So if you want to just tell me how many per game, I can, I'll give you.
I think they can score a little more than 22 per game. I don't think they're going to be back at Super Bowl level. I'd go like 24-5 a game.
24-5. So you're at 416.
Okay.
All right, 416. So that's a good tiebreaker. We're off by 37 points, and there you have it. That's our predictions.
Gosh, that's nerve-wracking for me.
It's just all right. Yeah. Next year you can come up with the categories.
Okay. Was there any? It's tough to be on the spot. I think I agree with all my answers. The Gainwell one is funny because I feel like I've been more bullish on Gainwell for longer. You've come around on Gainwell, but then it's funny that you went so much higher.
You're going 25 yards a game, which.
And so much of this is injury based. Miles misses 4 games. He's not hitting 1,200 yards.
No.
Yeah. Overall, I kind of wanted to end this pod just looking at the season in general. We can start with win total projections. Where do you have them?
Well, I did my week by week, which is on the site right now, I think. I ended up 9-8, and they got there by opening up 4-7. It's just the way the schedule is. I think it's really top heavy. You have the Chiefs and the Buccaneers early. There's some interesting games that obviously it's going to come down to the division games, but the schedule. You look at that schedule, and there's a lot of potential wins there late in the season. I know it's easy to think. The Eagles won 4 games last year. There's no way they're going to win 9 games, but they play a lot of teams that are in the same boat as them. New coaches, new systems, new schemes, new quarterbacks. There's a lot of teams that you look at, the Eagles don't have this, they don't have that. Every team has those areas. So I think it's always natural to think that it's worse here than in other places. Now, this schedule, and they played 3 teams that had a winning record last year, and that's the Bucks, the Chiefs, and the Saints. And they beat the Saints. Jalen beat the Saints last year, and Breeze is gone, so they're a different team. So I think 9-8 is possible. I think it's going to be in that 7 to 10 area, but I'm going 9-8, and I got them winning the division too. I know Dallas is the favorite, and they should be. And if Dak's healthy and playing like Dak, they're probably the favorite. But I'm going on a hunch. I like what this team has done. I like the changes and the additions, and I see 9 wins there.
Yeah, I think they'll be an improved team. And a lot of times we do see a nice jump the first year of a new head coach, typically because the previous year was so bad it got the coach fired. But I think this team has too much talent to win 4 games again. You know, I look at them and I think they're in the 7 to 9 win range. I'll stick with 8 wins, which would make them 8 and 9, which isn't great. It would keep them in the playoff hunt for most of the year in what's a pretty poor division. Ultimately, I think Washington's going to win the division. I just think they're the steadiest team. They won the division last year. They have a better quarterback. I like what Ron Rivera's done. I don't trust the Cowboys. I certainly don't trust the Giants. I think the Eagles will be competitive. But, 8 wins would be a good season, I think.
Yeah, you double your win total.
Expectations. Yeah, and I think that, look, and I don't even think the win total will necessarily mean a good or bad season. I think there are other things to look for this year to know whether or not it was a success. So for me, you know, I think the Eagles want to come out of the season having an answer on Jalen Hurts, one way or the other. One way or the other. Either he's your guy or he's not your guy. But I think the disaster scenario, we haven't talked about it in a while, is that he's in the middle. And I think that's a real possibility that he's okay. He's just good enough to keep this job and just good enough to not really know if he can take the next step. And then the Eagles are going to have a really tough decision because they have these assets now. They have cap space now. Do they hold on to a player and hope he improves, or do they make a bold move and go get a different quarterback? That's the one thing that's in the back of my mind about this season. I know you think they're going to know. Peter King, who we had on the pod a while back, thinks they're just going to know. And I'm not convinced about that. I think there's a real possibility that Jalen Hurts is improved, that he's a good quarterback, that he shows that he's a middle of the pack quarterback, maybe even a top 13, 14 quarterback in the league. But is that that's the one thing about this season that I'd be worried about if I'm the Eagles.
Yeah, and the other option is that they go with him again next year and use all those picks to upgrade the talent around him. It's funny, though, you know, when you think about Randall, when he came out, he wasn't even the regular starter till his 4th year. Teams don't have that luxury anymore. I mean, you can't do that. So I think they're really going to have to know at the end of this year, they're just going to have to know. But I think we will. I just think, and I think he will be the guy. I think he's, I'm not, you know, listen, until we see it happen, there's no way to be sure, but I'm pretty optimistic about Jalen Hurts. I have a good feeling about this kid. And again, you talked about first-year coaches. I mean, and I've said this before, Ray Rose was coach of the year in 95. The Eagles went 10-6, made the playoffs, coming off a team that lost 7 straight games. Rich Cote got fired. And then Andy's second year, they go 11-5. You know, I mean, Chip's first year, win the division, go 10-6. Taking over a team that was a disaster, went 4-12 in 2012. Doug's second year, you know, they went to the Super Bowl and won it. So the last coach that didn't make the playoffs in his first or second year with the Eagles, Buddy did it in 88. You throw out the strike year in 87 because there was 3 strike replacement games. They would have been 7-5 without him. So you got to go back to Marion Campbell to find an Eagles head coach that didn't make the playoffs in his second non-strike season. So it has to happen quick these days. And, you know, you get this year, but by next year they got to win something. I think I think 9-8 is realistic, and I like that number.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think it might be a good thing, too, that you mentioned the schedule's kind of top heavy. They're playing some tough teams early. We'll learn a lot about this team from if they lose those games, how they respond. And that'll kind of tell us a lot about Sirianni. So there will be things to watch all year, even if they're not winning games. We want to see how they respond and if Sirianni's messaging gets through. So just right there with Hurts is Sirianni's performance and how the guys respond to him.
Yeah, those two are tied together. Even though he wasn't here when he was drafted, I mean, their success is depends on each other.
Yeah. All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please rate or please like and subscribe. Go ahead. What?
Can we just congratulate Erica Kemp of Rancocas Valley from Mount Holly? She's the U.S. national champion in the 20,000 meter road run in New Haven yesterday. Pretty incredible, right? Number 6 time in U.S. history for a 20,000 meter road course. I know you meant to mention that, but I think
I meant to lead with it, actually. Congratulations, Erica. I don't want to minimize your accomplishment.
Yes, you do.
But I also don't care. All right. Yeah, please, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe there. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll be back later in the week to break down the Falcons game.